Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Chov Zayin Amud Beis. 2 lines from the top. The Mishnah taught us that one can be mefane dalid or hey kupois to make room in order to perform a mitzvah. For example, hachnasas orachim, and therefore, as long as those items are not muktzah, although there might be a tircha in normal circumstances, here no gazu rabbanon b'makom mitzvah. So once the Mishnah had mentioned hachnasas orachim as an example, the Gemara brought many maimorim in regards to the greatness, the gadlus of the mitzvah hachnasas orachim. For example, Godol hachnasas orachim mehashkamas beis hamedrash. Godol mehachnasas orachim mehakbolas pnei shchina. Then Rabbi Yochanan taught that there are 6 mitzvahs. He says that are a person's oichel perosim b'olam hazeh v'hakeren kayemes lo'ilam habo. And amongst them he mentions is hachnasas orachim, as well as havedan es chaveru lekav zechus. Now our Gemara brings brises in regards to this great mitzvah being dan lekav zechus. It's a mitzvah asay min haTorah of betzedek tishpoit amisecha. Says the Gemara on the second line, bringing the following brisa: Tonu Rabbanon hadones chaveru lekav zechus donin oisoi lezechus. One who dons, he judges his fellow man favorably, then he will be judged mida keneged mida favorably. Umaise ba'odam echod sheyor migalil ha'elyon v'niskar eitzo balabayis echod bedoram shalosh shonim. The brisa tells us about the following maisa, where a man was hired out and he worked for somebody in the Galil for 3 years. Erev Yom Kippurim is now Erev Yom Kippurim 3 years later, and he's ready to take his schar. Omar loy tein li schari ve'elich va'ozon es ishti ubonai. Give me my wages so I can go ahead and be mafarnes my wife and children. It's now going to be the time of Chagim, of Yontif, and now it's time to go home. Omar loy, the Balabai said to him, Ainli mois, I have no money to give you. Omar loy, so he said to his boss, Tainli payros, so give me payros instead of the money. Omar loy, ainli, I don't have. Tainli karka, so give me the ground, give me some karka. And that way I can go ahead and sell the karka. Ainli, I don't have karka. Now of course, he's been working the karka. He's been here doing all of this work. And the man says, I don't have any karka to give you. But nonetheless, he says to him, Tainli behema, give me an animal in lieu of my payment. Ainli, I don't have that either. It's also strange. He sees behemos perhaps over there on the yonder. Tainli karim uksosos, give me pillows and cushions for my payment. Ainli, he says, I don't have. Hifshil kelav la'achora v'holach lebeso b'pachei nefesh. It says that the worker, he then took his belongings and he went back home disheartened. La'achar haregel, after Sukkis, nota balabayis scharo biyodoi v'imoi mosui gimel chamarim. He took the wages that he owed his worker, and he brought it together with 3 donkeys laden with the following: Echad shel maicha v'echad shel mishta v'echad shel minei begodim. One was laden with food, the other one was laden with drink, and the third one with delicacies. V'holach loy lebeis, and he went to visit his worker. Acha she'achlu v'shosu nasan lo scharo. After they ate and drank, then he gave him his wages. Omar loy, the balabais turns to his worker. B'shosho martali tainli schori v'marti ainli mos b'mecha shedetani. What did you suspect me when I said I don't have any money to give you? Omarti, the worker said, I said to myself, Shema prakmatia bezol nizdam noloch v'lokachta behen. Maybe you had a way of selling merchandise for cheap before you indeed owed me the money, and therefore you sold the merchandise. Therefore you had no money to go ahead. You bought merchandise for a low price, and therefore you had no money. When I said to you, give me an animal in lieu of my payment, and I said the balabais ainli behem, I don't have. What did you suspect of me? Says the worker, Amarti, I said to myself, Shema muskeres biyad acherim. Maybe it was rented by somebody else, to somebody else, and therefore it's not in your possession to give. When you said to me, okay, give me some real property, some ground, some karka, I said to you, ainli karka. I said, I don't have karka. What did you suspect of me? Omarti shema muchreches biyad acherim hi. Maybe that land was leased by a farmer, a leased, so that the farmer would then give him a certain amount of share in the crops that he would produce, and that would be his luma's payment, and therefore he was leased out. He couldn't give any karka. When I told you I don't have any fruit, any tvua, what did you suspect of me then? I said the worker, Shema einan mu'usaros. Maybe they were not tithed. I don't have any pillows or pillows or cushions. What did you suspect of me then? I said, Shema hikdish kol nechasav l'shamayim. Maybe he was makdish all of his nechasim to shamayim, and therefore they're off limits, they're kodesh. Omar lei, the balabais turns to his work and he says, ha'avoida kachaya. He takes an oath and he says, indeed, this is what took place. Hidarti kol nechasai bishvil hurkenes beni shel osak batayro. I took a ned there that all of my property should not get any benefit from my son, hurkenes, and therefore I made them hektish. Ukshebasi eitzel chaveira badorim. But when I came to them, my comrades in the Dorom, hitiru li kol nedorai. Then they were matir my neder, and therefore now I have what to give you. V'ato, and the balabais tells his employee, his worker, v'ato kishem shedintani lezchus, kach hamokom yadin oischo lezchus. Just like you had judged me favorably, so too he gives him a bracha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should then dan you the kaf zechus. In truth, we have to understand, after all, these are very far off types of justifications. And here, the requirement to judge the kaf zechus, only when it's very, very far off and everything looks meek, do you have to dan the kaf zechus, only if it's going to be a tzaddik yirei shomayim. So the Shiltis has a girsa that this is referring to the balabais as being Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, the great sage Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol. And indeed, the worker, before he became the great Talmid Chacham as he was Rabbi Akiva. But nonetheless, Rabbi Akiva is, as an Am HaOretz, still, you see his midah of tzanu umayli, like the Gemara tells us somewhere else, that he had the great midos to then dan the kaf zechus, even in such a situation which seemed to be so bleak and so meek. And therefore, he was danning the sage who was the balabais lekaf zechus. So here we see that even though mina shamayim, there's no suffix, so how could it be that he's given the bracha just like you donned me the kaf zechus, like HaKadosh Baruch Hu should don you the kaf zechus? When a person has a suffix before him, whether somebody did something either on the side choiv or the side zechus, so he's to don him the kaf zechus. But there's no suffix klape shmaya, and therefore, what does it mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should judge you favorably? So you have to say over here that if a person is going to then try and determine that somebody is innocent because he wants him to be zakai, and therefore he judges him l'kav zechus, then mida keneged mida, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will then judge that person favorably. That means to say that he'll give him, that'll be part of the judgment itself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will then take into account that since he looks at other people in a favorable way, so too HaKadosh Baruch Hu will then add that to the din and judge him also favorably. The Gemara now brings two other maisim. Ton Rabbanon, Maise bechasid echod shepoda riva achas bas Yisrael, who went and he redeemed pidyon nefesh, a bas Yisrael, ulemaloin hishkiva tachas magloisov. When he got to the inn, he placed her by his feet. L'mochar, the next day, Yorad v'toval v'shono l'talmidov. The next morning he got up, he went and was toivel himself in the mikvah, and then he went to teach his talmidim. V'omar lehem, and he said to his talmidim, B'sho shehishkavtio tachas mergloisai, when I placed her by the feet of my bed, Bamech hashidituni, what did you suspect of me? Omarnu, we said, Shema yesh banu talmid she'eno boduk l'Rebbe. Maybe there's amongst us talmidim somebody who's not really checked, somebody who's not really trustworthy. When I then went to be toivel in the mikvah, which aroused suspicion, what did you think then? What did you suspect of me? Amarnu Shema mipnei torach haderech eira kari l'Rebbe. Maybe because of the travels, so Rebbe had he saw Keri, and therefore he was toivel himself in the mikvah the next morning before he taught the talmidim. Omar lehem, the Rebbe says to the talmidim, ha'avoido kach haya. He takes an oath. Indeed, this is what took place. V'atem kishem shedantuni lekaf zechus, hamokum yadin eschem lekaf zechus. The Gemara now brings the third ma'aseh Tanu Rabbanon Pa'am Achas. Hutzrach davar echo letalmidei chachamim etzom metranisio achas. The Talmidei Chachamim needed a certain matter to be discussed by a goyish noble woman. Shekol gedolei roimi mitzuyin etzlo. That all of the gedolei roimi were by her, which shows you what type of noble woman she was. Omru, they said, mi yelech. So who's going to go to this matroniso, this goy? Omar lahem, Rabbi Yoshua, ani elech. Rabbi Yoshua volunteered to go. Holach Rabbi Yoshua v'talmidav. He went together with his talmidim. Kiven shehigia lepesach beisa cholat tefila berichuk dalet amos v'nichnas v'noah hadelas bifneim. Once he got within dalet amos, so he took off his tefillin, and then he went in and he locked the door behind him. The Mefarshim explained it's not an issue of yichud over here, because it was not yet nigzar, the isser of nida with a non-Jewish woman. After he left, yorad v'tova v'shona l'talmidov. Afterwards he was toivel, and then he taught his talmidim. V'omar lahem, and he said to his talmidim, b'sho shechalasti tefillin b'mechesh retuni. What did you suspect of me? Because after all, when a person is with a woman, so he has to take off his tefillin. He can't be with a woman. And therefore, what did you suspect me when I took off my tefillin? Omarnu, we thought, Kisova Rebbe lo yichnesu divrei kedusha b'makam tuma, that you didn't want to bring a davar sheba kedusha tefillin together with you in this meeting with this woman. B'shosha na'alti, when I closed and locked the door, b'mechash retuni, what did you suspect of me then? Omarnu, we thought Shema davar malchus yesh beino leveino. There's a certain private, secret matter that had to be discussed with you and her, and therefore nobody could be around in order to be inside of the room together. Then the time when I then went and was tov myself in the mikvah, what did you suspect of me then? Omarnu, we said, Shema nitzet sinura mipia al begodav shel Rebbe. Maybe a piece of spit went on the clothing of Rebbe, and the Chazal were goizer the spit of a non-Jew to be the status of a zava, and since it then was on the garment, it was like he was carrying tuma, and the status of a zava is metame b'maga umasa, so therefore it would render him tameh, and that's why he went into the mikvah. Omar lehem, he said to Talmidim, ha'avoida kachayo. He takes an oath and says that's indeed what took place. V'atem kishem shedantuni lezchus hamokom yadin eschem lekaf lezchus. So too, just as you judged me favorably, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu should then judge you mida keneged mida lekaf zechus. The Gemara now turns to the Mishnah, and now the Mishnah gave a list of things that a person can mefane for a dvar mitzvah, because they are not muktzah, and therefore they're able to be moved on Shabbos. Mefanin truma tahara. The first item was truma tahara. Frek the Gemara asks, pshita, that's straightforward. If it's truma that's tahara, what's wrong with that? Is nothing should be rendering it muktzah? The Gemara says lo tzricha. The mancha biyad Yisrael, it was placed in the hands of a Yisrael, and since it was in the hands of a Yisrael, by a Yisrael cannot eat truma, and therefore since it's off limits to a Yisrael to eat, maybe we would think it was muktzah. Mao the same, you might think even the lechazyale aser, since it's not fitting for the Yisrael, therefore the truma is aser to be moved. Kamash malon kivan the chazia lekoyin shabidomi, since it is fitting for a kohen, therefore it's not muktzah even for the Yisrael. The next item the Mishnah mentions that one could move is demai. Ask the Gemara, demai halachazile. Behold, demai, this is tvua that was sold by an Amma Oretz, and you bought it from an Amma Oretz, and you were not clear, you weren't sure whether he took out maisris. So it's demai. So demai is usher to be eaten. So therefore, since it's not fitting, therefore it should be muktzah. So why can you move it? Kivan the iboy mafkir lenochase v'have ani v'chazile hashanami chazile. Since it would be fitting to give to an ani, because Chazal says you could give demai to an ani, and you couldn't eat, eat demai. Therefore, since you could go ahead and mafkir your nechas and become an ani, therefore it's valid and therefore it's not muktzah. This nan. What's the Mishnah that teaches this? Is Shittas Beis Hillel. Machilnes ha'anim demai v'achasanya demai. You can feed demai to an ani and also to achsanya. Achsanya refers to over here when a Jewish king provides soldiers in a certain town, so he requires that those who live in the town provide food for the soldiers. That's referring to the achsanai, and the achsanai can be fed demai as well. V'amar Rav Huna Tana Beis Shammai oimrim ein machilin es ha'anim demai ves achsani demai. Beis Hillel oimrim machil es ha'anim demai ves achsani demai. And this is Shittas Beis Hillel, who we follow, that says that you can be feeding the demai to both anim as well as the achsanya. The next item in the Mishnah is umayser rishon shenitla trumasoi. This specifically, this simply reads as saying that it was meiser rishon. That's the meiser that the Levi gets from the balasode, and it says shenitla trumasa, that he took off truma, which sounds like he took off trumas meiser, that he gives a portion to the kohen. Midrabanan, it's going to be a portion to the Rabbon, to the Kohen, 140th, 150th, 160th. V'chi ha da Omar b'Abohu Amar Reish Lakish, and this is what Rabbi Abahu said in Reish Lakish. Oh, I'm sorry, skip. Ask the Gemara Pshita. It's Pashit. If you go based on the regular reading of the Mishnah, it sounds again like the Levi, he takes out from his meister the Trumas meister to give to the Kohen. So why would it be problem to then move this? This is good truvua. There's nothing wrong with it. Why should it be muktzah? Answers the Gemara: L'tzricha shehigdimu b'shiboilim v'not lehemenu trumas meiser v'lo not lehemenu truma gdola. Here we're talking about a situation when the Levi was given his meiser from the Baal Hasadeh. Before the Baal Hasadeh gave truma gedola, he's supposed to, in the order, first give truma gedola to the kohen, and then give meiser to the Levi. But instead, he was over in Isser Diaraisa, and he gave the meiser to the Levi without giving the truma gedola to the kohen. And it says over here that nonetheless, this is not going to be muktzah, because after all, even though he did an Isser, but it's valid still to eat, and it won't be an issue over here of moving. If the meiser rishon was, let's say the Baal Hasadeh had a pile of grain, he didn't yet put a pile and smooth it out, so that it was finished to be then given for meisers. And then at this point is what we're talking about, where the Levi was given or took his meiser before the Kohen was given his truma gedola, since it was not yet obligated in giving the trumas and meisers yet, because it wasn't yet a pile that was smoothed out. Therefore, he says that it is going to be potter from truma gedola if he already gave that meiser to the Levi. Shenemar, as it states, v'harimoisa mimenu trumas Hashem meiser mina meiser. Here it says in the pasuk that he'll take truma of trumas Hashem, Meiser mina meiser amarti lecha. I tell you to take your truma from your meiser, v'loi truma gedola v'trumas meiser mina meiser. Not truma gedola from your meiser that you already took. In other words, once the Levi was given his meiser, certainly he has to take truma to give from that meiser to the kohen. But he doesn't have to now give back the truma gedola that was not yet given by the balas sodeh. Omar le'Rav Papa la'Abaye. Papa asked the following objection to Abaye: Ihochi, if that's so, that the when the balas sodeh gives the meiser to the Levi before giving the truma gedola to the kohen, and that's going to be, it's true he's over in Isser, but that's going to make it so that the Levi does not have to give now truma gedola to the kohen, then afilu hikdima b'kri namili potter, even if there was now a kri, that means to say that the balas sodeh then did the finishing act of making a pile of grain and smoothing it out. So now it becomes chayev at this point in trumas and meisers. And then he makes the mistake and he gives the Levi a meiser. So why don't we say over here that the Levi who took the meiser must take his truma from the meiser to give to the kohen, but he doesn't have to go back and give the truma gedol that was not yet given by the balas sodeh to the kohen. Why don't we say that? Why do we say that that's not so? Why do we say that he does have to, in this case, give the truma gedola to the kohen? Why don't we say it's the same? It's not. Why don't we say it's not? Why do we not say it's the same as what we said before in regards to the case when the pile was not yet made and smoothed out, but rather the Levi took the meiser before it became chayiv and trumas and meisers? Omar lei. So Abaye says back to Rav Papa because there's a difference. Alecha makro. The pasuk is coming to say to you the following: Mikol matnoisechem tarimu v'goymer. In this pasuk it says Mikol matnoisechem tarimu es kol trumas Hashem. And therefore we learn out, Ma Ra'isa, what do you see from here? That you'd have to give over here the Truma Gedola if you did it out of order. Whereas before we said differently, before we said that once you didn't give the Truma Gedola, then the Gedola does not have to be given. Ma Ra'isa, because Hai Idgan V'Hai Lo Idgan. If indeed the pile was made and smoothed out, then it's together Dagon. And the pasuk requires that Reishis Dagoncha. Now it's Chal Trumas and Meisers. Therefore, you must give first the Reishis Dagoncha, which is then going to be the Truma Gedola first. If you didn't do that, then you have to go back and give the Truma Gedola. That which it says in the previous pasuk, that's referring to when it wasn't yet a pile and smoothed out. It didn't yet become Chal and Chayev in Trumas and Meisers yet. And still, Shui went out of order and the Levi took his meiser, but he doesn't have to go back and give the Truma Gedola. The Gemara now brings the next item in the Mishnah. You can move and be mefaneh for a mitzvah meiser sheni. Frek the Gemara again pshita. If meiser sheni you are poide, so what's the problem? It's good grain. There's nothing wrong with it. You're going to go ahead and eat it in Yerushalayim. Why is it muktzah? Lo tzricha shenosen es hakeren v'lo nosen es hachaymish. Because this, I said it wrong. This grain that was Meiser Sheni, right? It was Meiser Sheni, but you were poide, and therefore now the grain doesn't have kedusha. So the kedusha is now on the matbeya. So why is this grain now? Why is it muktzah? This is something that doesn't have kedusha anymore. And says the Gemara, Lo tzricha shenosan es hakeren v'lo nosan es hachaymesh. It's true you were poide, but you didn't add the required chaymesh. So although it's true you need to add the chaymesh, but it's still mutter to eat, and therefore you can metaltal it as well. The hakamashman the ein chaymesh ma'akev, it's not ma'akev. Another item that the Mishnah mentions that you can move to mifane for a mitzvah is v'hatormus hayavesh, for a dry tormus. And we said tormus is a type of legume, and here it says specifically dafka yavesh avalach loy. Dafka if it's dry, but if it's wet, meaning if it's something that's lach, that's moist, not. Why? What's the difference? My taima. Kiven demari loy achla. If it's moist, it becomes too bitter, and therefore it's not even edible whatsoever, and therefore it becomes muktzah. Over here, the turmus is only yavesh that you can move, but if it's lach, then it's aser betiltul on Shabbos.